I'm standing barefoot on the front porch when my mother slides the deadbolt shut from the inside. The metallic click sounds like a final judgment in the quiet afternoon air. Through the glass panels of the front door, I see my father already turning away like I'm a complete stranger. There is no hesitation in his movement, just a cold, deliberate dismissal. You made your choices, Zephyrine Wrenvale, my mother says flatly, her voice muffled by the heavy wood. This isn't your home anymore. My hands freeze on the brass door handle, the cold metal biting into my skin. I can't believe this is actually happening. I've spent my whole life trying to please them, yet here I am, locked out like a common intruder. But behind me, something else is happening. A white city council vehicle pulls slowly into the gravel driveway, its tires crunching the stones. The driver steps out, adjusting his cap and checking a silver clipboard while looking directly at my house. My parents notice him through the side window, but they still don't open the door for me. My father adds, his voice dripping with bitterness, "We're done supporting your failures." In that exact moment, a surge of clarity hits me. They don't even know who just arrived for me. I stand there on the porch, feeling the weight of the neighbors' stares as they watch from across the street. It is deeply humiliating to be treated like an outcast in the place where I grew up. The city council officer walks closer, his boots thumping rhythmically on the driveway. I knock on the door one more time, softer now, hoping for a shred of parental mercy. There is absolutely no answer. I can hear the muffled sound of my younger brother laughing inside, probably playing a video game as if his sister isn't being thrown to the wolves on the front lawn. He sounds so carefree, so completely disconnected from the cruelty our parents are showing. I take a deep breath and turn around to face the officer. I've been preparing for this day for months, but I didn't expect the emotional blow of the locked door to sting this much. My parents think they are protecting their castle, but they are actually locking themselves inside a problem they can't ignore. The officer stops at the bottom of the steps, looking between me and the silent house. He sees a girl locked out, but he also sees a woman who has filed a very serious legal request. The silence from inside the house is heavy, but the arrival of the city official means that the time for silence is officially over. The city council officer greets me by name as he reaches the porch. "Ms. Wrenvale. We're here for the property verification," he says firmly. His voice carries in the quiet neighborhood, and I know my parents can hear him perfectly through the door. Suddenly, the shadows behind the glass go completely still. My parents have stopped their retreat into the house because they hear that professional, official tone. They recognize the authority in his voice, and it changes the entire dynamic of the afternoon. They probably expected me to beg or cry, but they didn't expect a city representative to show up and use my name with such respect. I see my father's silhouette move back toward the door. The confidence they had just seconds ago, when they were sliding that deadbolt home, is starting to evaporate. They think this is about my failures, but the officer is here because of my initiative. I stand tall, despite being barefoot and locked out. The verification process is a standard part of municipal law, but in this specific house, it is a revolutionary act. My parents have always treated this property like an untouchable fortress, but the city views it as a collection of records and regulations. Now, those records are about to be opened in front of everyone. The first real crack in their confidence appears when my father finally opens the door halfway. He doesn't look at me. Instead, he looks directly at the officer with a forced, nervous smile. "This must be a mistake," he says quickly, his voice higher than usual. The officer doesn't return the smile and simply shakes his head. "No mistake, sir. We're here regarding ownership confirmation." My mother appears behind him, her hand gripping the doorframe so tight her knuckles are white. For the first time in my life, I see them look truly unsure. They are used to being the absolute rulers of this small domain, but they have no power over a city council mandate. I stay quiet, letting the officer do his job. My parents are staring at the clipboard like it's a weapon. They still haven't acknowledged me, but the presence of the officer makes it impossible to ignore the situation. The neighborhood is quiet, but I can feel the eyes of the people next door on us. This isn't a private family matter anymore, it's a public inquiry. My father tries to stand a little taller, but the way his eyes keep darting to the council car tells me he's terrified of what that clipboard contains. I decide it's time to speak, and I explain calmly to my stunned parents, I requested the council review. The look they give me is pure bewilderment, as if I just spoke a language from another planet. My mother's shock turns into a sharp, jagged anger. "You did what?" she snaps, her voice finally breaking the official silence. She takes a step onto the porch, looking like she wants to grab me, but the officer is already confirming my statement. He does it quietly and officially, which only makes the impact harder. Ms. Wrenvale filed the petition for a full title and contribution audit, the officer explains, flipping through the pages of his file. My parents are frozen. They have always told me that I'm a failure who can't handle adult responsibilities, yet I've managed to trigger a high-level municipal investigation. The irony isn't lost on me. I've spent years paying for things in this house while being told I contribute nothing. Now, I'm using the city's legal framework to prove exactly what I've done. My parents look at each other, a silent conversation of panic passing between them. They realize that the failure just brought the law to their doorstep, and they don't have a plan for how to handle it. As the officer moves toward the entrance, the public embarrassment truly begins. Neighbors have started to gather at the edges of their lawns, and I can hear the whispers starting. Is that their daughter? Why is the city here? Someone asks loudly enough for us to hear. My parents finally step fully outside now, but it is way too late to save their reputation. They have always been obsessed with looking like the perfect, successful family on this block. Seeing a city council vehicle in their driveway with an officer questioning them is their worst nightmare. The situation is no longer a private family dispute that can be hidden behind a locked door. It is a spectacle. My mother tries to wave to a neighbor as if everything is fine, but her hand is shaking. My father is trying to look stern, but he just looks small next to the uniformed officer. I feel a strange mix of sadness and vindication. I never wanted to humiliate them, but they gave me no choice when they locked me out of the home I helped pay for. The whispers of the neighbors are the soundtrack to their falling pride. They realize they are no longer in control of how the world sees them, and that loss of control is clearly agonizing. The officer doesn't waste any time and asks for the property documentation. My father snaps back into his defensive mode, insisting loudly, "This is our house." He says it with a desperate kind of force, as if saying it makes it true. The officer pauses, looking down at his clipboard with a neutral expression. Then he replies, "According to updated municipal records, it may not be." Silence drops over the porch like a heavy hammer. I can see the air leave my father's lungs. He looks like he's been struck. My mother's mouth hangs open, but no sound comes out. The neighbors have gone silent too, leaning in to hear the bombshell. Ownership of this house has been the foundation of my parents' identity and their leverage over me. If that foundation is cracked, everything they've used to bully me falls apart. I know what the records show because I'm the one who ensured they were updated with the proof of my financial contributions. My parents have spent years treating me like a guest who overstayed her welcome, but the law sees a different story. The officer waits for a response, but my parents are paralyzed. The realization that their ownership is in question is a blow they never saw coming from the daughter they dismissed as a failure. My mother finally finds her voice, but she uses it to turn on me with redirected rage. "You're trying to humiliate us," she screams, her face turning a deep, angry red. She doesn't care about the records or the facts, she only cares about the shame. But I don't raise my voice to match hers. I've learned that staying calm is much more powerful. "I didn't create the records," I say quietly. "I requested verification." That is the moment she realizes I'm not just making a wild guess. She sees the look in my eyes, the look of someone who is absolutely certain of her facts. I've spent the last 3 years meticulously documenting every utility bill, every repair, and every property tax installment I paid while they were supporting me. My parents thought I was just throwing money into a black hole to stay in their good graces. They didn't realize I was building a legal case for my right to stay. The officer watches our exchange, his face unreadable, but I can tell he's seen this kind of family dynamic before. My mother looks at me as if she's seeing me for the first time, and the fear in her eyes is unmistakable. She knows I have the receipts, and she knows they don't. The officer opens his counsel file and pulls out a specific set of papers, and something totally unexpected appears. He points to a transfer record from several years ago that my parents clearly forgot about or misunderstood. As he explains the details, a partial signature discrepancy comes to light, along with a specific legal clause. It turns out that when they refinanced the house and asked me to co-sign because their credit was failing, they agreed to terms that gave me a significant equity stake. They probably thought the paperwork was just a formality to get the bank's approval, but the city council records it as a legal transfer of interest. Their confidence starts to crack and crumble right before my eyes. My father looks like he's going to faint. He had always told me that my signature didn't mean I owned anything, just that I was responsible for the debt. He lied to me to keep me subservient, but the city doesn't care about his lies. They only care about the names on the deeds and the tax records. I watch as the weight of this reality settles on them. The daughter they locked out is actually a part owner of the very door they bolted. Just as the tension reaches a boiling point, my younger brother finally steps outside. The laughter I heard from inside is gone, replaced by a look of total confusion and growing worry. He looks at the officer, then at our parents, then finally at me. He whispers, "Why is counsel here because of you?" He sounds like he's losing his anchor. My mother quickly moves to push him back inside, her hands shaking as she grips his shoulders. She wants to shield him from the truth, but the damage is already done. He saw the city vehicle. He heard the officer. He knows that his failure of a sister is the one holding all the cards. My brother has always been the golden child who never had to contribute, while I was the one paying the bills in secret. Now he's seeing the world flip upside down. My mother slams the door behind him, but she stays on the porch, trapped between the law and the neighbors. The officer continues to make notes, seemingly ignoring the family drama. To him, this is a property dispute. To us, it's the end of a long-held family lie. My brother's face through the window is the last thing I see before the officer turns his attention back to my father. The officer clears his throat and announces that the council request is expanding. This isn't just a quick check anymore, it's a full-scale municipal inquiry. He informs my parents that he will need to inspect the utilities, the internal records, and the last 5 years of tax filings for the property. My parents panic for the first time in a way that is visible to the whole street. They aren't just angry anymore, they are terrified. "This is harassment," my father stammers, his face pale and sweaty. "You can't just come here and demand our private papers." But the officer remains perfectly calm and professional. "It's standard procedure." The word "standard" sounds like a threat to my father. He's realized that the city has the power to look into every corner of their financial life. They've been misrepresenting their income and property value for years to get tax exemptions they didn't deserve. Now, because they chose to lock me out, the city is going to find every single one of their secrets. The standard procedure is about to become their total undoing. My father looks at me with pure venom, but he can't do anything to stop the wheels of bureaucracy that I have set in motion. The officer pulls out a specific document from his clipboard, a utility bill for the house. "I see here that the primary account holder for water and electricity has changed," he says. He shows the paper to my parents, and it clearly lists the account under my name. My parents go completely quiet, the fight finally draining out of them. That silence says more than any argument ever could. They had told everyone that they paid for everything and that I was just a guest who didn't contribute. But the city's records show that I've been the one keeping the lights on for the last 2 years. They had been taking my money and then telling the world I was a failure. Now, their lie is documented on official city letterhead. My mother looks down at her shoes, unable to meet the officer's eyes. My father's hands are balled into fists at his sides, but he doesn't say a word. The truth is sitting right there in black and white. They locked out the person who pays their bills. The absurdity of it is starting to sink in for the neighbors, too. I see one of them shaking their head in disbelief. My parents are no longer the victims of a disrespectful daughter, they are the perpetrators of a massive family deception. I decide to remind them gently of the reality they've tried to ignore. I've been paying major portions of this property's costs for years, I say, my voice steady and soft. I'm not gloating, I'm just stating the facts. My mother looks up, her eyes narrow as she tries to find a way to spin the truth. You were just helping us, she shakes her head, her voice trembling. That doesn't give you rights to the house. But I correct her softly, no, I say. I was documenting it. I explain that I've kept every receipt, every bank transfer, and every tax record. I didn't just give them cash, I paid the bills directly from my own accounts. In the eyes of the law, that constitutes a significant financial interest in the property. They thought they were being clever by letting me pay while keeping my name off the initial title, but they didn't realize that municipal law accounts for equitable interest. I've been more of an adult in this house than they ever were. The officer nods as I speak, confirming that my documentation matches the city's findings. My parents look smaller with every word I say. The failure they tried to discard is the only thing that has been keeping them afloat. The power dynamic on the porch shifts completely. The officer steps closer to my parents, his presence more imposing now. We may need to review occupancy rights, he says firmly. My father stiffens immediately, his survival instincts kicking in. You can't just remove us from our home, he says, his voice cracking with fear. But nobody said that, at least not yet. The officer is just laying out the legal possibilities. However, the fact that removal is even being discussed is a nightmare my parents never imagined. They were the ones who locked me out, thinking they held all the power. Now, they are facing the possibility of losing their own right to be there. I watch them crumble. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a desperate, wide-eyed terror. They are looking at the house they've lived in for 20 years, and for the first time, they don't see a fortress. They see a liability. They realize that I am the one with the legal standing to stay, and they are the ones whose status is under review. The silence that follows the officer's statement is the loudest thing I've ever heard. My parents are realizing that the door they locked was the only thing protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. My mother's composure finally snaps, and she grabs my arm with a desperate, claw-like grip. Fix this, she pleads, her voice a ragged whisper. I look down at her hand on my skin, then up at her face, which is lined with a fear I've never seen before. She's not demanding anymore, she's begging. But I don't give in to the guilt that has controlled me for so long. I didn't break it, I say firmly, looking her right in the eye. It is a simple truth that hits her like a physical blow. She lets go of my arm, her hand falling limp at her side. She realizes that she can't manipulate me into saving them from a situation they created. I didn't misfile the records, and I didn't lie about the ownership. They did that. I just stopped participating in the lie. The officer watches this exchange with a professional detachment, but I can tell he's seen the shift in me. I am no longer the daughter seeking their approval, I am an owner seeking the truth. My mother turns away, her shoulders slumped, finally understanding that her power over me is gone. The house behind her looks cold and imposing, a place where I am no longer welcome, but where I have every right to be. The officer pulls out a second file from his clipboard, and the air on the porch seems to get even thinner. We've also discovered a major financial irregularity tied to the property tax exemptions you've been claiming, he says, his voice taking on a more serious tone. My parents look like they want to vanish into the floorboards. The officer explains that they've been claiming an exemption that they weren't entitled to because of the property's true ownership structure. My parents weren't just mistaken about the records, they may have deliberately misfiled critical documents to save money. This isn't just a property dispute anymore, it's a potential case of tax fraud. My father tries to speak, but only a dry, croaking sound comes out. They had been using me to pay the bills while also lying to the city to avoid taxes. They were doubling down on their deception, and now it's all coming to light. The failure of a daughter they locked out is the only person whose records are actually clean. The city isn't just here to verify ownership, they are here to investigate a crime. My parents are realizing that their attempts to save a few dollars might end up costing them everything. The discovery of the second file is the final nail in the coffin of their defense. The rumor of the city's presence has spread through the neighborhood like a wildfire. I look toward the street and see that neighbors have started recording the scene on their phones. People are standing on their porches, and a small group has gathered on the sidewalk, their screens glowing as they capture my parents' humiliation. The situation is now completely and undeniably public. My parents realize it too late, and the look of horror on their faces is devastating. They have always lived for the narrative of being the respected, successful leaders of this block. Now, they are no longer in control of that narrative. The story of the city council car, the barefoot daughter, and the potential fraud will be all over social media by dinner time. They are being exposed in front of the very people they've spent years trying to impress. The neighbors aren't just curious, they are witnessing the collapse of a long-standing facade. I feel a strange sense of detachment. I'm not the one recording, and I'm not the one whispering. I'm just the person standing in the truth. My parents are trapped in the spotlight of their own making, and for the first time, they can't hide behind their front door. The officer realizes that the situation has become too chaotic for the front porch, and he makes a formal request. I'm going to need both of you and Ms. Wrenvale to attend a formal meeting at City Hall, he says. My parents try to refuse, my father muttering something about his work schedule, but the officer doesn't budge. It's not optional, he says firmly. This is now official. The word official hangs in the air, final and heavy. My parents have lost the ability to negotiate. They are no longer the ones making the rules. They have to show up and answer for the records they've misfiled and the lies they've told. I see my mother's eyes fill with tears, but they are tears of frustration and shame, not regret. She's still thinking about the embarrassment, not the harm they did to me. I nod to the officer, showing my cooperation. I've already prepared my evidence, and I'm ready to present it in a formal setting. My parents, on the other hand, look like they are heading for a firing squad. The emergency meeting is the final step in the process of reclaiming my life. The house behind them is just a building now, the real battle is going to happen in a city office. The next morning at City Hall, the atmosphere is sterile and official. I sit across from my parents in a small, windowless meeting room. The officer is there, along with a senior municipal clerk. I present my meticulously organized payment history, years of contributions. I show the receipts they never acknowledged to anyone. I lay out the records they thought I'd never keep. The clerk reviews every single page carefully, the sound of flipping paper the only noise in the room. My parents look smaller and smaller with every page she turns. They are seeing the sheer volume of my support laid out in black and white. It's not just a few bills, it's thousands of dollars that kept their home from foreclosure and their lights from being turned off. They look like two children caught in a massive lie. My father keeps staring at the table, his face a mask of misery. My mother is clutching her purse so tight her knuckles are white. They are finally facing the true cost of their deception. The evidence is overwhelming, and there is no way for them to spin it anymore. The failure they tried to discard is the only reason they still have a roof over their heads. The clerk finishes the review and looks up at my father, her expression stern. My father finally breaks the silence and mutters the first apology of the day, but it's not a real one. "We didn't know it mattered," he says, his voice barely audible. He's trying to pretend that they were just ignorant of the rules, not malicious. But I am ready for that excuse. "It mattered enough to lock me out," I answered quietly, my voice echoing in the small room. My words hang in the air, a direct indictment of their cruelty. He can't respond to that. There is no logical or moral defense for locking a part owner out of their own home while they are paying the bills. He looks away, his face turning a deep shade of red. The clerk makes a note in her file, and I can tell she's not buying his ignorance plea either. My mother is silent, her head bowed. They are being forced to confront the emotional reality of what they did, and they have no defense. The truth is finally being spoken, and it is a bitter pill for them to swallow. The silence that follows my statement is heavy with the weight of years of unspoken resentment. The officer begins to prepare a preliminary ruling based on the evidence and the meeting. My parents realize that the situation is about to become legally binding, and they panic again. They ask the officer if they can speak to me privately for a few minutes. I know exactly what they want, to beg me to drop the inquiry or to manipulate me into a family agreement that would protect them. But I don't hesitate. I refuse, I say firmly, looking directly at the officer. I don't want any more private conversations, and I don't want any more secret deals. Everything is already on record, I add, gesturing to the files on the table. I'm done with the whispers and the lies behind closed doors. I want this handled officially, in the light of day, where they can't twist my words or make me feel guilty for their mistakes. My parents look shocked by my refusal. They are used to me being the one who caves to keep the peace. But the peace they offered was a prison. The officer nods and continues his work, respecting my decision. My parents are trapped in the official process, and for once, I am the one who is safe. A few days later, the city council issues its final decision. The truth is finalized in a series of official documents. The ownership records for the house are formally clarified. The property rights are adjusted, and the access authority is legally corrected. My parents are officially informed that they are no longer the sole decision-makers for the property. They can't sell it, they can't refinance it, and they definitely can't lock me out ever again without facing immediate legal consequences. The power they used to bully me has been permanently dismantled. I receive my copy of the ruling in the mail, and I feel a weight lift off my shoulders that I've been carrying for years. I am no longer a guest or a failure in my own home. I am a legal owner with rights that are protected by the city. My parents have to live with the reality that their deception backfired completely. They tried to take everything from me, and instead, they lost their absolute control over their own lives. The truth is a powerful thing when it's backed by the law. I am no longer the invisible daughter, I am a woman with a voice and a home that belongs to me. I return to the house to collect the rest of my things, and I notice that the door they once locked has changed meaning completely. It is now officially flagged for review compliance, meaning any attempt to interfere with my access will be reported to the council. As I walk up the driveway, I see my parents standing inside the house, watching me through the glass. They look like prisoners in their own home. I stand outside on the porch, feeling perfectly calm and steady. I am no longer the girl shivering barefoot in the cold. I am a woman who knows her worth and her rights. I am no longer excluded from the family narrative, and I am certainly no longer invisible. My presence is a reminder of their failure, not mine. They don't open the door, but they don't lock it either. They just watch as I move with confidence. The house is the same, but the energy has shifted. I don't feel the need to beg for their love or their approval anymore. I have something better, I have the truth. I am standing in my own space, on my own terms, and they have no power to stop me. My mother finally breaks down as I'm loading the last of my boxes into my car. She comes out onto the porch, her face wet with tears. "I didn't think you'd go this far, Zephyrine," she sobs, her voice full of a strange mix of hurt and disbelief. She still thinks I'm the one who did something wrong by seeking legal protection. I pause and look at her, my heart finally clear of the old anger. "I didn't go far," I answered quietly, my voice echoing in the quiet driveway. "I just stopped staying quiet." That is the fundamental truth of the entire situation. I didn't attack them, I just stopped allowing them to lie about me. I stopped being the silent partner in my own destruction. She looks at me, and for a moment, I think she might actually understand. But then she turns and goes back inside, the door closing softly behind her. I realize that she may never truly get it, and that's okay. My freedom doesn't depend on her understanding. I've reclaimed my voice, and that is enough. I finish loading my car and take a deep breath. I'm not running away, and I'm not being forced out. I am leaving on my own terms, with my head held high. As I'm getting ready to drive away, the city council car that has been parked down the street prepares to leave. The officer who handled the case nods to me respectfully as he pulls away. My parents are standing at the doorway in total silence, watching me go. It is the same doorway they once closed on me with such cruelty. Now it is open, but it is not a comforting sight for them. It is a reminder of everything they lost because of their pride. As I walk down the driveway for the last time, I realize something very simple but profound. I didn't need to force my way back into their lives or their home. I didn't need to scream or beg or fight. I just needed the truth to arrive first. The truth did all the work for me. It opened the doors that lies had closed, and it gave me back the power they tried to steal. I get into my car and start the engine. I don't look back in the rearview mirror. I am moving forward into a life where I am no longer defined by their opinions. I am Zephyrine Wrenvale, and I am finally, truly home, within myself.